Welcome back to episode 38 of Oneself. My name is Stephen Maher. With me today, with me always, is Adam Bartleman. Adam, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me, Steven.
Yeah, bro. So, folks, when I was born with something called persistent hyperplastic primary vitreous, a bunch of words that just mean I'm blind in my left eye. And uh, I recently met a gentleman who also had like a low vision life, right? You know, he had one of his eyes removed because it was causing him a lot of pain. The other eye was very low vision. That for me was really cathartic, honestly, because it I never talked about my experience with people. Like it's not often you meet people like most people can see out of both eyes, right? And so I never talked to anyone about my experience really. And it was a really beautiful thing to just meet someone who's going through something similar and comparing notes, right? Seeing what he went through and like my experience and the different ways we just navigate the world. And it was really beautiful, man. Like it was a really, really beautiful thing. And Adam, and it was a really beautiful conversation. And he posted that to his all his channels. The reflection that I had was just how much it has shaped my worldview and my perspective. Because if I came into this world without this thing, or like without this little disadvantage, I wouldn't have had to work as hard to become the person that I am. And that person is more humility, right? Like it has a little bit more humility, a little bit more perspective, a little more gratitude because I've seen what I could be. You know, the children that are fully blind when I was going to the doctor's office as a child, I've seen those kids that are fully blind and they have way less tools in their ability to navigate the world. Where it's like I do have some vision and where they have none, and how scary that is as a child when you're just, you're in this body, you don't have all the tools that, the human body is supposed to be equipped with. And that's really scary. And
Mm.
so from a young age, it just gave me adaptability. It gave me perspective. It gave me a little bit of humility and gratitude. And it also pivoted me onto my path, right? In this life, because I was seeing my siblings and my family, and they're all good athletes. My mom, my dad, my siblings, like everyone was a pretty decent athlete, and I wanted to be that, but that just wasn't my story. And so what did I pivot more towards was music, and like I found this beautiful thing where it's like vision wasn't the most important thing. It's touch and hearing, when it comes to music, which are, the most important things, like being in my body and playing the instrument, but also like hearing it. And so yeah, man, yeah, it was just a cool week, a cool week of kind of seeing someone else who had a similar experience to me, and like I said, comparing notes and just thinking about all the things that have led me up to become the person that I am, which is
Mhm.
that's a main one because I was born with it, right from the get go. I was born with this thing, and yeah, brother. I know. I just want to share that. I know I've talked about it in the past in some episodes of just that experience, but it's been cool. It's been cool. It was a cool week to find someone else going through a similar experience and comparing notes because I've never talked really about this to other people or found someone with similar experiences. So yeah, man, it was really
Oh,
cool.
okay. Yeah, that's interesting, and I didn't know previously that you hadn't found too many people to talk to about that. So that's really cool because like with everything, like we talk about a lot on here, is community is important, and having a diverse community, and being able to connect with people, be in community with people who have gone through similar experiences is so valuable. So valuable. So that's awesome. I wanted to ask a little more and like touch on what you were mentioning before we hopped on about your partner's um take on the situation, on her perspective on your experience from what she knows of what you went through as a child, and how that shaped you. and
Yeah,
how that
yeah.
may have shaped you, and how, like, and what your thoughts are on it, if you want to share a little
Yeah,
more on
she
that.
had a good point where she was like, "You might have been a jerk, like,
Mm,
had it not been for this little check, right? Like, this, like, physical check on you."
hmm
Because, yeah, growing up as a tall, white dude in America, like, I was born with just a lot of advantages, when it comes to the
hmm
cosmic lottery. And, but, like, from the get-go, I was given this like little check, you know what I mean? So if I didn't have
hmm
that humility, that gratitude kind of imbued in me, and that took work. I wasn't always that way. Like, I was angry when I was a kid, like, that was a development through time, you know.
Yeah,
But the eventual conclusion was humility and gratitude for my circumstances. And so take that away, and it's like, who would I have become? Would
yeah,
I become, a little more of a jerk? Like, very possible,
yeah,
very, very possible. And so she raised a good point where she's like, I really, appreciate this about you because it's really made you who you are.
cool.
And I thought that was a good point, because I agree. I don't know if I would enjoy the person. I mean, it's like woulda, shoulda, coulda. Like, who knows what that timeline would
Yeah,
have looked like,
yeah.
but I will say that I really enjoy the lessons that it's given me and the man that I've become through those lessons. 3 decades on this planet.
That's cool, man. And yeah, because I think, you know, like, we can, and probably, all listeners can agree that we've met those people in life who seem to have, like, every single box ticked for every single advantage. And not to paint everyone with the same brush, but in many instances, at least in my own experience, observe those people to perhaps, yeah, be more likely to be a jerk, or at least a little less self-aware, a little less depth of character and personality. So I think when these kind of things happen, it can really be an advantage. What, is, because everything's perspective. We're talking about perspective here, which, is like, is also interesting, because we're talking, like, you have, in the physical sense, you had a limited perspective, but, with diminished sight, but then you had a deeper perspective, sort of like intrinsically, spiritually, because of that perceived disadvantage, as you put it. And really, like, so we come back to, like, it's all perspective. Was that really a disadvantage, or was it an advantage? And when we're like looking at things from the perspective of somewhere a little bit greater than just the perspective of the ego, we can start to see that it just depends on where we're looking. And if we're looking from somewhere deeper, if we're looking from the perspective of the soul, there can be, we can learn a lot more, because, yeah, there can be different truths existing at the same time, as we've said before. One truth might be, hey, this is a disadvantage because, I can't see as well. My depth perception is not as high as it could be. But then, at the same time, this is absolutely an advantage, because it's given you, yeah, more humility, and, I'm sure, untold different little micro perspective shifts throughout life that other people would not have made, had, with full vision. So it's really interesting. It always comes back to perspective.
The word navigate comes up a lot for me because it's like how to physically navigate the world and
Mm,
also how to like mentally navigate your mind when it comes to this sort of stuff. And so, yeah, when it comes to physically navigating the world, like everyone has hearing, but it's just like maybe I'm listening a little bit more of just like
mm.
because I'm not relying just on my sight like everyone else is. It's like I'm also listening for things coming my way and smelling things, coming my way. And if I can't see the dog poop on the ground, like I might smell it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Before I see it. So
yeah.
it's just like yeah, again, like I am operating on a little different way of like just how to navigate the world and avoid obstacles and avoid things in my way. So like that's the physical navigation. The other thing that that I was talking to Carl about. Carl's the name of the other gentleman, y'all, and that I was talking to Carl about was just like the spiritual navigation of this entire
Mm,
thing. where it's just like I've come to the conclusion, and that, we've talked about this, where it's just like the illusion of my ego and my body is not necessarily me, and I love this body, right? Like, this body has given me a lot of gifts, right? And a cool life. But, I've come to the conclusion that I'm not this physical body, right? My soul is inhabiting this body. So it's like whatever this body goes through, like, I'm not going to take it personally, right?
Yeah.
Against whatever. Like, it's the lessons I have come here to learn in this body, right? And so, there's a spiritual element of navigating this as well, and this is coming like more recently. Like, I wasn't thinking about this stuff in my 20s or my teens. This is like
Yeah.
these are recent revelations, y'all. I wasn't thinking about this stuff when I was 12. I was definitely thinking more, just I was completely on the physical, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of just navigating it. But the spiritual navigation was another thing that has been really interesting for me. And, we talk about those five universal truths that Chase Hughes was bringing up. Um,
Mhm.
and for folks that haven't looked into Chase Hughes at all, very interesting guy, done a lot of research, claims that, there's these like five universal truths that humanity has known for a long time. Um, One of them being that the crux of this show, like, we're all one, like, we're all one thing.
Mhm.
We're all one being, we're all one consciousness.
All
And
oneself.
all oneself, y'all. So that's brought me a lot of peace when I'm, where maybe when I was younger, I've had some anger at why am I in this body? Oh, this body, it's not
Mhm.
equipped with everything it should be, and
Mhm.
so, the spiritual revelations help me be at peace with the physical, I guess, is the conclusion of that
Yeah.
that stream of consciousness.
Yeah, man, because it's like the deeper perspective, right? It's like understanding, yeah, when we don't have so much attachment to the one incarnation, we don't have so much attachment to the one body and the one storyline, and recognize that this is just a tiny fraction of our experience. It really helps dial down the fear and dial down the seriousness with which we're taking everything. And when we do that, it's like, again, we're talking about perspective. It widens the aperture, it widens the perspective. We're able to see more. When we're taken out of fear-based thinking, we come out of tunnel vision, and we're able to see more, and we're able to recognize, like, wow, there's a lot more going on here than just my story, than just my struggles. And when we have that perspective, we're able to see actually how we fit in much more. We fit into the whole thing and how it makes more sense, right? Like, whatever happened to me, it happened for a reason, and it happened for a very good reason that is interconnected with every other thing in this universe, in all of creation. And so can start to look at those disadvantages, those traumas, whatever they are, in a totally different way, and just kind of take a deep breath and relax into the knowing that it's all good. And um, from that perspective of not having any attachment, it's not like we don't use our free will and our creative power to ameliorate things in such a way as we see fit. It's not a suggestion to bypass the suffering of ourselves or others, because that, while we can zoom out and see that it's all perfect, when we zoom in and we're focused on the individual expression, we recognize that the experience is real. While, like, this is all an illusion, the experience of it in the moment is real, and there's a point for that. That's why we're in these bodies. We chose to come and take these incarnations in order to have these experiences. So when we're holding that perspective of, like, non-attachment and seeing the perfection of everything, it's much more easy to move actually in the individualized, the individuated form and perspective, and see where we might make some improvements based on what we think is best. And that, again, that has to always be changing, because nothing it the nature of our creation here is that it is always changing. What seems right today might not seem right tomorrow, but we're constantly doing our best, and and doing our best to lend a hand to those who are asking for help when we can. Again, like the seeing it all as perfect is not a suggestion to bypass, but rather just to hold that perspective at the same time as seeing like, how can I help? How can I how can I help myself? How can I improve my well-being, my inner peace so that I can be a light unto others? How can I lend someone else a hand up? So it's really cool, like focusing on the ability to kind of like zoom in and zoom out, hold the soul perspective as well as the ego perspective. Cause it's like, just to go a little bit off here, it's like the whole spiritual advice on new age spiritual advice is very popular about, just killing the ego and everything. Again, like that's not the point. Just diminishing the control of the ego, but still utilizing it for the experience that we're here to have in a more um conscious and loving way.
You told me this one time where it's just like, it's not, it is me and I'm not my own enemy. It's like to befriend it.
Mm,
Was a perspective I really, yeah, because, you'll hear those things, so it's like, people going on a plant medicine ceremony or so, "Oh, death of my ego," and it's just like, I'm not trying to kill my ego because 'cause I'm not trying to kill a part of myself, right?
mhm,
I'm trying to be more come at peace or equilibrium or balance with the ego that is Steven, but recognizing that the soul is Steven now, but it's not always gonna be Steven, and it never was always
mhm.
Steven. It's just Steven in this moment and in this lifetime,
Yeah.
and to just enjoy that experience of just being Steven,
Yeah.
and figuring out who he is, right? Because that's a
Yeah.
fun journey, and like you said, and the growth and the learning, and it's just like, like I said, 3 decades on this planet, and it's like I finally got like I feel like I have a hand on the wheel of Steven, right?
Yeah.
And that's exciting.
Yeah, and I think I personally think it's like it's not so much about even like finding out who Steven is, it's like creating who Steven is. Realizing that like if we're only ever in this moment, if past and future are just like things that exist in our imagination, we're not defined by our stories from the past, and we're not defined by our fears of the future, and recognizing that it's just in this moment, and like who are we choosing to be in this moment. So like who do you choose to create yourself as in this moment? Because um while we do live in this paradigm where we're very we have been in the past very fear centered, it's now moving into a place where more people are becoming aware of the truth of their being, that which is like we don't need to hold on to all of this pain and trauma from the past. We can release it when we recognize the deeper aspects of our identity, like um our soul essence, and know that you can recreate yourself anew in every moment and choose who Stephen is. And like we're always, I mean, myself personally, I always was thinking like, yeah, this is like, it's going to happen sometime in the future. Like I'm going to become more aware in the future. I'm going to become more heart centered. I'm going to become less reactive. I'm going to release my trauma attachments sometime in the future, and then I'll be there. But it's like, it's never that. It's always the moment, because the moment is all there is. So it's like, recognizing that we can change like one moment to the next. You can drop it all one moment to the next. Like even that's a little bit of time, but I'm using that to explain it. Someone can turn from a sinner into a saint in an instant. Like it has to happen at some point. Like if we look from the perspective of like all this, trauma healing that is, very popular way of looking at our attachments and describing and discussing it, like at some point, you could conceivably understand that like if we believe in trauma healing, there will be a point when we heal all of our trauma from this incarnation, right? And that would have to be moment to moment, that would shift. So like why not this moment? Why, like every moment is just as real, or every moment, like the moment is the real experience. Thinking it's going to be something in the future is just a figment of the imagination. That's not real. So when we start to really, again, zoom out and just kind of take a deep breath and drop into the realization of who we are, we recognize that we have all of that creative power of the entire universe within us at all times. And it's just really just owning it. It's really just believing it, and knowing that we can create ourselves anew in each moment, and really not have to do so much to get to this place, but rather just be it. Rather choose to be it. You know, we were talking about fake it till you make it. Well, like a friend of mine said, instead of that, be it until you see it. That whole, like, the advice, like, if you're looking in the mirror waiting for the reflection to smile at you, you're gonna be standing there a long time. I think it was Bashar that said that, and it's like, you got to smile first if you want that reflection. We have to choose who we want to be. So, anyway, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I hope
No, I
that's all
like
right.
that, man, because it's like I often I think people feel like a little powerless in general. I felt that powerlessness, right? And it's just like that's a really
Yeah,
hopeful perspective in my mind, which I love hope, right? I don't want to be doom, gloom, misery all the time, even though I know there's a lot of pain and suffering in this world. To have some agency within our own lives where yeah, like there is that choice of just yeah, am I gonna smile today or am I gonna be a little grumpy or we've talked about that where just like yeah, we've talked about the attitude thing, like the attitude shift and how powerful that is and how powerful someone's energy is, it's just like when
mhm.
you're around someone that just has really good energy and just like is really loving and caring and fun, right, light. That's what I try to be, right, in my day to day. When there's serious moments, yes, I'm gonna put my adult hat on and, handle it. If it's not a serious moment, I wanna laugh, I wanna be light, I don't wanna take, this experience so seriously, because it's in my opinion, it's not, right? Like it should be fun, this experience as a human being in life, it should be fun and silly and, yeah, and, and creative, right? Like you said, creating these
Yeah.
things that I wanna see and do and be in myself and in others and in my community. And yeah, brother, yeah, no, I really like that, man. It's hopeful.
Yeah, and I think that, like, looking at it as it should be fun and silly is like, yeah, I think that's how it's supposed to be, and then also recognizing that in order to release more of the fear is understanding cause and effect and karma, because if it's not fun and silly and light, it's not because we are being punished. It's not because we are in danger. It's not because something has gone wrong. It is a direct result of our choices. It is a direct cause and effect relationship, and this is karma. And this is going over different lifetimes, if we're just using that linear perspective for the explanation of it. And uh yeah, whatever our circumstances, they have been chosen from a deep place of awareness that we often don't touch on in our individuated ego experience here. But understanding that everything was chosen, the great events in our life are chosen in order to bring us to awareness. Right. So, like, these experiences, these disadvantages, these traumas were really things that were actually placed there in order, or attracted to us, magnetized by us, because again, if we're all one, we're working together to wake each other up. Like, Ram Dass said, we're all just walking each other home because we're all one, having the experience of massive, like, infinite individuation, and then coming back to one. So if we're understanding that whatever bad and scary things are happening, are a result of our past actions and our karma, it that perspective dials down the fear, in my opinion, because we see that we do have agency, we do have, like, autonomy and power in this, because it is all self-created. So, like, yeah, like, I had a chip on my shoulder for the longest time, and then I moved into, like, moved into this deeper awareness of forgiveness, which was not like which was at first like, okay, I recognize that some bad things happened to me, and now I'm just forgiving because I feel like it's the right thing to do, because I want to release myself from this, whatever, and then it goes deeper to recognizing that nothing actually went wrong in the first place. the circumstances of my life were like essentially chosen, planned out in order for me to go through this experience, in order to wake up, in order to go from the experience of forgetfulness into remembering. And it's like, man, that like nothing even went wrong. Like, it's like if you, from my, in my opinion, from my perspective, if you were holding that like in for yourself, you could be like, there's nothing wrong with my eye. Like there was nothing wrong that was supposed to be like this. Nothing went wrong because, again, maybe that was like one of your greatest gifts, as we're talking about. You might have just been, you know, uh, straight white male bulldozing your way through life, taking advantage of people and like abusing privilege. And again, like I said, we've met those people. Um, and it's like, man, that's a way ahead. That's from a different perspective, so like from some perspective it might be like, oh, it must be nice to be like that and just, be fucking taking advantage of everybody and just having everyone, kiss your ass and get away with murder, basically and literally. Um, if we look at history. But from
Yeah.
a karmic perspective, it's like that could actually be a pretty heavy load, because that person, if they have taken those advantages and not used them wisely, not used them in a loving way, then they're like accruing karma for themselves that is heavy, that is going to have to be worked out in some other way. And again, that's not like a punishment thing. It's not like somebody's keeping tabs on it. It's just like that. It's like the deeper soul awareness is not being recognized by the lower aspect of that awareness, which, the purpose and motivation of that soul is to bring every part of itself back together. So, like the higher mind and the lower mind, like, Buddhism, like they talk about like the higher self and like the monkey mind, like the ego mind, bringing those into coherence. So if we're missing that, like we're missing that opportunity, it's like the very good looking, very wealthy person who just, abuses their power and doesn't use their gifts to uplift others, but rather simply for egoic gain. Well, it's like, many people might envy them, and we do have a society that is set up in such a way that we obsess over those people, right? We make them movie stars and singers and think that they've got it all. But from my perspective, or at least from one perspective that I sometimes hold, is that that's actually a really heavy trip and not something that I would want anything to do with, because it's dense, right? It's dense. It's materially dense. Like, look at the accumulation of material goods, which was warned against specifically by one of the greatest teachers to ever walk this planet, Jesus, saying that, lay up your treasures not where moth and rust doth corrupt. And thieves can break in and steal,
Yeah.
because that shit's not real. Lay up your treasures in like the spiritual storehouse, in the soul storehouse. You really cultivate a deeper awareness there. So again, bringing it back to something that happens in an incarnation in which maybe you would have been on that track, something that happens that checks you and brings you back to a deeper awareness, a deeper place of compassion, is like such a gift. It's like, it is a spiritual boon, because um yeah, it could really get out of hand. It could become a bit of a monster.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Yeah, I could have easily been a part of the problem, I think. But and, we've talked about this too, where it's like not to have judgment on other people's circumstances, because it's not necessarily good or bad. It just is, right?
Yeah.
And but what other people's circumstances, again, that we call ourselves keen observers of life. And I was observing when I was younger, the younger sibling thing, right? Where it's just like I'm watching my siblings, do things right and do things wrong, and watch other
Yeah.
people do things right and do things wrong, and taking that into consideration, how to conduct my life. I think too, man, just like empathy, brother, like just empathy for
Yeah.
what other people were going through, which is just like I see such a strong lack of empathy in our society today. And where it's like, and we've always seen it, right? Like old men sending young men to their deaths. We're seeing that right now, like play out, the last 20 years of 25 years. of of American society, right? Just sending all kids to their deaths for nothing, civilians to their death for nothing. And what it taught me more than anything was just like, oh man, like empathy for the other children in the doctor's office with me, right?
Mm.
And because I was just like, that sucks, like what they're going
Yeah.
through. Like my heart aches for them. And I was scared, and I know they were scared, right? In the doctor's office, and and they had every reason to be. And so just like, the empathy for other people and what they're going through, what their circumstances are, and and if you have the capacity to help, to do so, right? Not at the expense of yourself, but like if you have the ability to, make other people's burdens a little lighter, it's like, why not do that? And
Yeah.
when you say those sorts of things in our society today, bro, where it's just like Tupac, we got money for wars, can't feed the poor. Why don't you want to give free lunches to the children? Why don't you
Yeah.
want to provide free food to the kids? Oh, my tax dollars. I don't want to feed fucking kids with my. It's like, brother, why? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, what's the logic there? What's the logic there? Which is like you want to fund wars, but you don't want to fund daycare, or whatever the president was saying, or it's just he's just, we got wars to we got wars going on, we can't provide money for daycare. It's like, you don't want to provide childcare for children, and you guys are the people that are preaching, like you want to bring children into this world,
Yeah.
which it's like, great, but can't we care for them when they're here? you
Yeah.
know it's just like the lack of empathy, man, is just is in some ways infuriating. But it's, I think that's what my circumstances brought into my life as well, is just empathy, y'all. Like, empathy. I don't want other people to suffer, why can't, if I can live a life of dignity and grace, it's like, why can't other people do that as well? There's more than enough in this planet. That's one of the biggest lies, I think, that we've been told. Is like, there's not enough food, there's not enough housing, there's not enough, whatever. It's like, there is enough. We're just really bad at how we manage the resources, and we're supposed to be the caretakers of this planet. And and there is enough, like there's enough for everybody. And it's just hoarded, right? Like, these things are just hoarded. The money, which is
Yeah.
fake, that's not even a real thing. The food is hoarded, and the resources are hoarded, the land is hoarded. And yeah, yeah, that's me on my tangent, my high horse. But I think, if crux of all that, y'all, is just is empathy, and I think it's changing, right? I think the younger generations probably have a little bit more capacity for that. Number one, because say what you want about the internet. I know there's pros and cons to it, but it does connect us in some ways. Like, everyone's seen a video of someone going through something. I've watched videos on the internet where like a tear all of a sudden is at the corner of my eye, and I'm like, like
Mhm.
it brings that empathy for us, because it does put you in the shoes of another person, another
Yeah.
culture, another life. I was crying the other day, dude, about like, someone saw their parents after 23 years, right? Like, I think, one of the kids went to the United States, and grew up in Mexico, and then for the first time in 20 years, like,
Mm.
saw his parents again back in Mexico, and like surprised his parents. And I'm like, oh my god, like,
Wow. Yeah.
who's cutting the onions in here,
Yeah.
and and so it's just like that empathy for that human experience of just like, oh man, like what that must be like to not see my parents for 20 years, and then to all of a sudden see them. It was like you saw the little boy in that grown ass man
Yeah.
for those couple seconds. Like, he was like, he called for his mom, and he called for his dad, and it was big family reunion, big family hug, and it was so beautiful. And again, so it's like, and like you see people, in the comments or whatever, and it's just like, yeah, like that. I think that capacity for empathy is growing, especially amongst the younger generations. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I hope to see more of it.
Yeah, man, and that's like that's deep truth that you shared about like the lack of empathy. As far as I'm concerned, deep truth. There's more than enough. It's just poorly managed and hoarded, which is just like the micro and the macro reflection. It's like, what do you say about someone who is a hoarder in their personal life in their home? It's like, well, that's a mental illness. So yeah, we have a big collective mental illness on this planet that we're slowly working through by coming out of the fear and back into love, because that's the only way. And that's the cool thing. Again, I always like to talk about actionable steps is like, how do we help that? How do we make a change? And it's like, it's in our own personal choices, and it is that important. Like, I remember in my former job many years ago, like, getting mad at guys for throwing the recyclables in the garbage, and and be like, man, just put it in the recycling bin. It's right next to it. It's easy. Just do it. And like, oh well, who cares? I'm just like one person. What does it even matter? And I'm like, yeah, well, if everybody on the planet holds that opinion, then nothing will ever change. And it's the same thing with all of this. Like, people are like, well, what can I do? And it just comes back to like, be more loving toward yourself. Be more loving to your neighbors, to your family members. To like, just take that breath and step back when we're starting to feel reactive, and just allow those feelings to pass rather than attaching to them, and then spreading that anger, spitting that venom out, keeping it inside rather, to allow it to clean us. And yeah, just be if you want a more loving world, then you need a more loving community. If you want a more loving community, then you need a more loving family and household. And it's like, if you want a more loving family and household, then you got to be a more loving person. So it always comes back. And then that's like the coolest thing about this whole thing, in my opinion, is the journey of spiritual growth and changing the entire world is the same thing. Like, the personal and the massive, collective perspective, it's all the
Micro,
same thing.
macro. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all a perfect reflection, the whatever the hermetic principles. It's like, we have so much power, and that's the thing that truly is exciting. When we look closely enough, we can see that is true. And I'll hang my hat on that one. Like, we can see that it's true. You just have to look. Just become a keen observer of life. Which, what does that mean? It starts with being a keen observer of yourself and the people around you, because they're perfect reflections of you. As much as that might sting the ego at times, it's true. Um, as it has for me. but but yeah, it just comes back to that, man. Like, we've got all the power within us, and we always have. The reason it's gone so out of hand is just because we stopped believing that we had that power. But the truth is that it's always been there. It's just to be in the experience of owning it is when we really take it back, or bring it back into the experience of having it, because obviously it is there. We're just not expressing it because of the awareness. So yeah, it's an exciting game. And I catch myself all the time slipping into fear about this or that. And then it's always just about bringing it back, reeling it back in a little bit sooner than last time, and then getting to the point where then you can kind of see that trigger coming, and not allowing the fear to take you at all, because when it does, it just kind of lowers our vibration, and then we can't be that person in our family, which then affects the community, which then affects the country and the world. So it's just constantly, like, that's the work, just constantly focusing on where we're at in relation to what's going on around us.
Yeah, brother. Even talking about stuff on here, it's like I feel the fear rising, like, oh, like, what would people think, or what? But it's just like,
Yes.
like, it's like you can't let that impact the things that you believe, the belief, when it comes to music, when it comes to many parts of my life, man. Like, I was just
Yeah.
in fear,
Living and
and it's
speaking
like,
your
no, like,
truth.
to be living and speaking my truth, and the power in that, sitting in that power, and power, I feel like, is has a negative connotation in this um day and age, but you
As it
know
would.
power in its yeah, yeah, but power to change, like power to be a force of good, and not to oppress, but power to be an example, right? We've talked about this, where it's just like, I'm not trying to force anybody to change, but I am trying to be a good example for others to look towards and to follow, hopefully.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the younger men, or the younger kids in this generation. It's just like, to be a powerful example is my goal.
Yeah, and demonstrate what does real power mean. The like, a really great phrase is, not power over, but power with. You know, power that is exercised in order to create some sort of hierarchy is not power at all. That's like that's just mental illness. That's sickness. That's a profoundly sick society. Real power is recognizing the infinite flow that is generated when we are in the full awareness of our connectivity, of our connection with everything and our oneness. And so it's power shared with others. Again, it's like what is your wealth if you've got $1 billion, you know, in the bank and in your, you know, different assets and whatever stocks, like what, like if your money, if your value on paper is like this massive amount of money and you're just sitting there keeping it to yourself or using it to generate more, it's like that's hoarding. That's a mental illness. Like I truly believe that real wealth is like is wealth that is shared, is wealth that is used to uplift others. You know, it's um yeah, the kind of the thing
Yeah. Dude,
like a
even
great
the billionaires of the past built like libraries and or sorry, but yeah, no, like,
uh,
like you hear like Carnegie Hall or, the, famous libraries or hospitals, or it's like even they like built something. It's like you're not seeing any of that like
yeah,
in this
yeah.
day and age. Like there's no Bezos hospital facility or,
Yeah.
like there's no Zuckerberg, music hall or whatever, opera hall. It's like um yeah, even that is like they're not even doing that anymore,
Yeah.
just to kind of carry favor with the public. It's really, yeah, like you said, it's really a mental illness.
Yeah, or if they are doing something, it's like it's, you know, and again, not to judge, but whatever. It's like kind of like, is it really self-serving? Is it like, is this a tax break? Is this another ego trip? Is this like, you know, Pablo Escobar building a soccer stadium so that he knows he'll always be protected by these people, by the people from his neighborhood, the kind of thing. Like, is it really selfless, or is it really still coming from that individuated idea, that limited idea of self, or is it really coming from an expanded concept of self, which you know, including more than just one's egoic body self, is understanding self as being everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, bro. No, no, yeah, it's always been self-serving. I think even in the
Yeah,
past it was like, to keep the torches and the pitchforks off the lawn, but
yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's never been out of altruism. It's
Yeah,
always been self-serving. So again, mental illness, like it's a calculated move rather than just doing it from the good of your heart, right? Trying to,
mhm.
make the lives of those in your community better. But Adam, any closing thoughts on episode 38 of Oneself?
No, not too much, man. Yeah, just the reminder that we are powerful. We always have been. It's just the experience of not being powerful has just been because of a erroneous um set of beliefs that we've been holding on to. So it's releasing that in order to come back to the truth of what we've always been. You know, we don't have to work to get we don't have to work to get our power. We don't have to work to get back to a connection with our creator. We already are there. It's just removing the debris, removing the smudges on the lens through which we're looking so that we can see the truth. So um yeah, which comes back to, you know, cleaning up how we're looking at ourselves and focusing on that self-love so that we can share it with others from a real and centered place.
Folks, if you like what you heard on Oneself today, please support us in all the ways that are free, like, comment, subscribe, share with friends. That really helps us out a lot. Otherwise, we will catch you next week and have a great rest of your day.